Well, here's my position in clear terms. I don't think anyone can understand this unless they have children. I truly don't. I think that people who have not had children, raised children, can understand what we're talking about when we say we don't want our children brainwashed. Let me explain why. At age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, when they're being brainwashed about the wonders of the gay lifestyle, children don't even understand sexuality. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
They don't know what sex is. You brainwash the child when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 into thinking they might be gay. When the teachers start brainwashing them and say, well, you know, you might be gay. What does a kid know what that means? A kid who's 9 years old has no sexual drive at all, generally. So he hangs out with his friends, if he's a boy, with other friends, and they say, well, if you like the company of other boys, you might be gay. What they're doing is brainwashing boys into becoming gay and girls into becoming gay by telling them that. That's outrageous to put that in the children's heads. And you don't understand this until you have children, that you don't want your children to be taken upon by this movement that is brainwashing them, particularly when they're pre-sexual, with sexual ideas. This is a very important point. I wouldn't want the children to be taught about sexuality at all when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, for example, let alone homosexual choices. How can they make a choice when they don't even know what they are? So a kid who might be slightly effeminate, let's say a boy, for example, is not particularly macho. He doesn't like to play games. He doesn't like to run around in the football field. He likes more sensitive things in his life, and he's sort of effeminate in his voice. Does that mean he's gay? It doesn't mean he's gay at all. But if you start telling a child like that, well, you're probably gay because of the way you are, you take a wonderful person with a great genetic possibility and you castigate that person into the well of loneliness for the rest of his life. Moreover, you deny the human gene pool of some very valuable DNA. And I want to keep repeating this. I have said this for 15 years, as long as I'm in the radio. One of the reasons America is suffering right now is because so many people who are gay have not had children. You heard me. That's exactly what I mean, and I want to repeat it. Some of the most wonderful genetic material is going to waste. And I will say that until you finally understand me. You know, in the past, if people had certain inclinations, they usually got married anyway owing to social pressure, and they usually had children anyway owing to social pressure, and they would practice their proclivities on the side. But because the set and the frame of our society has been so altered, where the criminal is now revered more than the cop, where the killer is more revered than the priest, people have come to think that being gay is actually superior to being heterosexual, and not having children is somehow a more advanced way to live. I don't want to go into the details of what I'm saying to you, but I think you get it in broad strokes. And I'll just repeat my main point, is that so many thousands, if not millions of people who are openly practicing the gay lifestyle and who have condemned themselves to not have children and who have cut off their DNA from the human pool have so denied humanity in so many ways. And I want to say that until you finally understand, it's a loss, in other words. It's a tragic loss to our society and to other societies. And for that reason alone, I would discourage so-called homosexual marriage. And I think I've made a very able point. And I think I made a point in a way that can be taken only in one way, which is a positive way. That's how I see this. I'm going to diverge and digress for a moment. One of my favorite books that saved me was called The Importance of Living by Lin Yutang. If you've been listening to my show for 15 years or some part of it, I told a story once that when I was 18 years old, I found this book in a friend's his father's library. And I started reading it, and I was going through my sufferings of young worth, a period of, woe is me, what's life all about? And there was a chapter in there by Lin Yutang called The Chinese Family Ideal that put me straight and put me on the right road. And it was about the Chinese family ideal, and it's so beautiful that I think I'm going to read pieces for you. He writes, it's a well-known fact that Chinese society and Chinese life are organized on the basis of the family system. This system determines and colors the entire Chinese pattern of life. Whence came the family ideal of life? And he goes on and he answers. He said, with its tremendous emphasis on the husband-wife relationship as the foundation of all human relationships, on filial piety toward parents, annual visits to ancestral graves, ancestor worship, and the institution of the ancestral hall. And he goes into Chinese ancestor worship, which we're not here to discuss. But he talks about man and woman in an interesting way. And he says God took a handful of mud, molded it into human shape, and breathed into its nostrils a breath, and there was Adam. But Adam began to crack and fall to pieces, and so he took some water, and with the water he molded the clay. And this water which entered into Adam's being was called Eve, and only in having Eve in his being was Adam's life complete. At least that seems to me to be the symbolic significance of marriage. Woman is water and man is clay, and water permeates and molds the clay, and the clay holds the water and gives it substance, in which water moves and lives and has its full being. He then talks about midlife between a man and a woman. Madame Quan, wife of the great Yuan painter Zhao Mengfu, and she herself was a painter. But in the middle of their lives together, his attraction to his wife began to diminish, and he was thinking of taking a mistress. And his wife of many years, Madame Quan, wrote the following poem, which touched his heart and changed his mind. "Twixt you and me, there's too much emotion. That's the reason why there's such a commotion. Take a lump of clay, wet it, pat it, and make an image of me. And an image of you, then smash them, crash them, and add a little water. Break them and remake them into an image of you and an image of me. Then in my clay there's a little of you, and in your clay there's a little of me, and nothing ever shall us sever. Living will sleep in the same quilt, and dead will be buried together." I think that's one of the most beautiful poems written about a husband and wife I've ever read in my life. And I don't hear this anywhere. I don't hear anyone celebrating man and woman. I don't hear anybody celebrating marriage and family. I don't hear anyone celebrating family and children and ancestors. I hear none of this. We're living in a very unbrave new world, and it ties right into our political structure. Our political structure has also evolved into something it was never meant to become in this country. It has been tried before. The system that Obama is trying to impose upon us, to bring it down to brass tacks, is really not an American system. This system, by the way, is not limited to Obama. It was started a long time ago in this country. And I have used the phrase the neo-Marxist system of Obama, and I use it again and again. When have you heard this president, or the last president for that matter, after the first few years of Bush, after he used the evangelicals to get to the presidency, when did he last, let's go back to Bush, really fundamentally talk about the sacred bond of man and woman, the sacred nature of the family? I didn't hear much of it from Bush. Maybe he did it. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I had the chicken pox when that lesson was given. I don't remember him talking about it. I believe most politicians use various groups until they don't need them, and they have no fundamental beliefs of their own, or if they do, we don't know what they are. But Obama is a married man to a beautiful woman called Michelle. He has 2 beautiful children. Why doesn't Obama ever discuss the beauties of marriage? You would think that a man who is married himself, in particular for the black community, you heard the caller earlier, why doesn't he talk about the beauties of marriage and the beauties of family? Well, I'll let you figure out why. I'll let you figure out what forces and influences are controlling every power structure in the Western world today. The Chinese Family Ideal by Lin Yutang in the book The Importance of Living. But I don't understand why relegating same-sex couples to domestic partnership doesn't work. I still don't understand that.
Domestic partnership doesn't give them the same rights as a marriage does.
Bob, I want to ask a side question because we'll disagree on this. When did your daughter know she was not heterosexual?
Somewhere in her 30s.
Had she been married to a man, or had she dated men prior to that?
Yes.
All right. Well, this is something that's going on, and it goes back to my fundamental point, which is that when you make something too accessible, you remove too many people from the normal track of marriage and family. When I was a kid, you had to get married, and you had to have children. That's how society goes forward. The societal pressures must be upon the children to get married and have children, or we're dead as a people. Savage. Because it's the last thing I want people to think is that I have some kind of, hidden agenda or antipathy towards gay people, which I really don't. I myself don't practice that particular way of life. On the other hand, I've met people who are gay. So what? It doesn't mean anything to me. And whatever they are as a human being, they are to me. But when I see the radical gays pushing this agenda, that bothers me. That's what bothers me.